The apartment was silent, the air heavy with the weight of things unsaid. I sat on the couch, staring at my hands, the ring still tightly gripped between my fingers. I hadn't taken it off in years, not once. Not even after everything had started falling apart. The wedding ring that had once meant so much to me, the symbol of forever, now felt like nothing more than a weight I could barely bear. It was a Wednesday, but I couldn't have told you what day it was, or even what time it was. The concept of time had blurred into something intangible ever since she dropped the bomb on me. "I don't know if I love you anymore," she had said. Those words echoed in my mind like a broken record, playing over and over, each repetition digging deeper into the scar that had formed where my heart used to be. I looked at the door to our bedroom, the same door I had walked through every night for years. Now, it felt like a barrier to something I couldn't cross. She was in there, and she was just as distant as the walls that separated us. We hadn't spoken more than a few words to each other in the last week. It was like living with a stranger. You might be wondering how we got here. How did I, a guy who thought he had everything figured out, end up alone in this apartment, with nothing but a ring and a lifetime of memories that suddenly felt like lies? It wasn't one thing. It was 1,000 little things. The small gestures that weren't returned. The looks that turned into glares. The once familiar touch that had long since faded into indifference. But that night, the night she told me those words, everything came to a head. "I think we need to talk," she had said, her voice softer than usual. I should have known then that something was wrong, but I didn't. I was too wrapped up in the routine of our lives, thinking things would somehow magically fix themselves. I didn't realize how far we had drifted until she laid it out in front of me, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And that was it. "I don't know if I love you anymore." The sentence hung in the air like a fog I couldn't escape. I could see the tears in her eyes, but they weren't the tears of someone who wanted to fix things. They were the tears of someone who had already made up her mind. The person she was looking at wasn't me anymore, or at least, I wasn't the person I thought I was. I wasn't who I had imagined I would be. I had failed her, and that realization hit me harder than anything else. In a daze, I got up and walked to the kitchen, not knowing what else to do. I grabbed a glass of water, but my hands were shaking. I couldn't bring myself to look at her, to speak. My thoughts were running in every direction, trying to find a way out, trying to find some piece of me that still existed in this nightmare. And then, in the silence that followed, I did something I still can't fully explain. I took off the ring. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry or beg or shout. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the ring in my palm. The weight of it was overwhelming, suffocating, and without thinking, I threw it on the counter. "I guess that's it then," I muttered, though I'm not even sure I was talking to her anymore. She didn't move. She didn't even look at me. She just sat there, her eyes hollow, as if she had already checked out of the marriage a long time ago. In that moment, I realized I was just a spectator in my own life. "I'll go," she said, breaking the silence. And just like that, she stood up and walked out the door. No tears, no drama, just a quiet exit from the life we had built together. I remember sitting there for a long time, staring at the spot where she had been, feeling an emptiness I had never known before. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Sadness? Relief? Anger? The truth was, I felt none of those things, only a vast, all-encompassing emptiness. The kind of emptiness that makes you question everything you thought you knew about love, about life, about yourself. The next morning, I woke up in the same bed, but it wasn't the same anymore. She was gone, but the remnants of her presence were everywhere. The smell of her perfume lingered in the air, the sight of her clothes still hanging in the closet. It all felt like a cruel joke, a life that had been erased in a single conversation. Days passed. I tried calling her, but she never picked up. I sent her texts, asking what happened, what went wrong, but there was no answer. It was like I was speaking to a ghost. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take the silence anymore, something unexpected happened. A week later, I came home from work to find a car parked outside. It wasn't hers. In fact, I didn't recognize the car at all. And that's when I saw her. Liza's best friend, Natalie. She was standing there in the driveway, looking at me like she had just seen a ghost. "Jacob," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." I stood there frozen, staring at Natalie. It wasn't normal for her to just show up at my door like this. I hadn't seen her in months, not since one of the last parties Liza and I had thrown together. Back then, Everything seemed fine. But now, with the weight of what had just happened between Liza and me, I couldn't help but feel a strange, unsettling energy in the air. Natalie shifted uncomfortably on the porch, her hands clasped in front of her like she was trying to hold herself together. I could see it in her eyes. Something was off. She wasn't just here for a casual visit. I could tell by the way she hesitated, as if deciding whether or not to even speak. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the chaos in my mind. "Jacob," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to tell you something. Something about Liza." My heart skipped a beat. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, though I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever she was about to say. Natalie glanced over her shoulder, as though to make sure no one else was listening. "Can I come inside?" she asked quietly. I nodded, unsure of what to expect. I stepped aside to let her in, though every instinct inside me was telling me to run the other way. Something told me this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. We sat down on the couch, and Natalie wrung her hands together, visibly nervous. She looked at me with wide eyes, as though searching for the right words. "This isn't easy, Jacob, but I think you need to know the truth." The truth. My mind raced. My heart pounded in my chest. What truth? What was she talking about? The only truth I knew was that my life had just been torn apart, and I wasn't sure how to piece it back together. "Liza, she's been hiding something from you," Natalie continued, her voice low and guarded. "Something big. And I think you need to hear it from me, because she's not going to tell you." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Every muscle in my body went rigid. "What are you talking about? What has she been hiding?" Natalie hesitated again, looking down at her hands. She seemed to be weighing the gravity of her words before speaking. "It's about someone else, Jacob. Someone from her past. Someone she's been seeing." My mind went blank. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. "Someone else?" I repeated, barely able to get the words out. "Are you telling me Liza's been cheating on me?" The words hung in the air like an accusation I wasn't ready to face. Natalie didn't respond right away, and I could feel the weight of her silence pressing down on me. Finally, she nodded slowly, her face etched with sadness. "I'm so sorry, Jacob," she said quietly. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you. But I couldn't stand seeing you like this, not knowing the truth. It's been going on for a while now, and I don't think she ever planned on telling you." I could feel the world spinning around me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but all I could do was sit there in stunned silence. The betrayal stung worse than anything I could have imagined. How had I not seen it? How had I been so blind? "Who is he?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. "Who's the person she's been seeing?" Natalie paused before answering, her eyes flicking nervously toward the door. "It's someone she's known for a long time, Jacob. Someone from work. His name is Marcus." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Marcus. I had met him a few times, mostly at social gatherings, but I'd never thought much of him. He was always friendly, a little too charming maybe, but nothing that would have ever raised suspicion. Now, I could feel my anger building. This man, this Marcus, had been a part of my life for longer than I realized. And all along, he had been something else to Liza, something I couldn't compete with. "You have to understand, Jacob," Natalie continued, her voice softer now. "Liza's been going through a lot. I don't know the full story, but I think she thought she could find what she was missing with him. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't think she's coming back." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I couldn't process the reality of it. My wife, the woman I had built my life around, had been seeing another man behind my back. And worse, she hadn't had the decency to tell me. Instead, she had left me with a broken heart and a shattered future. For a long moment, there was silence between us. I was trying to absorb everything Natalie had just told me, but it felt like I was drowning in it. How could she do this to me? How could I have been so blind to everything that had been happening right under my nose? I looked up at Natalie, my face pale, my hands clenched into fists. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Why not sooner? Why wait until now?" She sighed deeply, her eyes filled with regret. "Because I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to hurt you, but I also knew you had a right to know the truth. And you deserve better than this." The words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I nodded. "I need to think," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I need to figure out what I'm going to do." Natalie stood up, giving me a sympathetic look before heading for the door. Take your time, Jacob, she said softly. I'll be here if you need anything. I watched her leave, and once the door clicked shut behind her, I was left alone with nothing but the truth. The life I had known was gone. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, had betrayed me in a way I could never have imagined. What was I supposed to do now? I sat in the living room, staring at the door Natalie had just walked out of, her words still echoing in my head. The world felt like it was caving in around me. How had I not seen this? How had I been so blind to everything Liza had been hiding? I stood up, pacing around the room, trying to shake off the overwhelming sense of betrayal. I needed answers. I needed to confront Liza, but I wasn't sure where to even begin. Then, as I walked past the kitchen counter, I noticed something out of place, a letter. It was a simple white envelope, addressed to me in Liza's handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. What was this? Why hadn't she given it to me before? I picked it up with shaking hands, my fingers barely able to grip the paper. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I was ready to face whatever this letter might say, but I couldn't avoid it. I tore it open and unfolded the paper inside. Jacob, it began. I know things have been hard between us, and I know I haven't been fair to you. I can't keep living this lie. You deserve the truth. There's someone else, someone I've been seeing for months. His name is Marcus. I never meant for it to go this far, but I couldn't help myself. I've tried to fight it, but I don't know how to stop. The words hit me like a freight train. I thought I knew the worst of it after Natalie's visit, but this letter, it was a confession in its purest form. Liza had been seeing him for months. And worse, she admitted she couldn't stop. I'm so sorry for the pain this will cause you, Jacob. You deserve so much better. I don't know how to fix this. I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me one day. But I don't think I can stay with you anymore. Please don't try to find me. I dropped the letter, my hands trembling uncontrollably. This was it. She was gone. I wasn't just some victim of a betrayal. I was the one who had been left behind. I wasn't just a husband. I wasn't even a part of her life anymore. She had made her decision. The last sentence lingered in my mind. Please don't try to find me. It was final. There would be no closure, no confrontation, nothing. I was meant to let her go, to simply accept the end of everything. But as I stood there, holding the letter in my hands, I realized something. This wasn't just about Liza. It wasn't just about Marcus. This was about me. About my life, my future. I wasn't going to let her take everything from me without a fight. But what was I supposed to do next? Where do you go when everything you thought you knew has been shattered into pieces? The letter lay on the floor in front of me, a crumpled mess of paper, its contents now burned into my mind. Please don't try to find me. Those words felt like a knife twisting deeper every time I thought about them. It was as if she wanted to erase everything. She didn't just leave me. She wanted to make sure I couldn't even try to find out why, or if there was any chance of making it right. I don't even know how long I stood there, staring at the letter. Minutes? Hours? It didn't matter. Everything felt suspended, as though time itself had stopped just to let me process the unbearable truth. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had made a choice. And that choice wasn't me. My mind raced. I needed to do something. Sitting here, wallowing in my own self-pity, wasn't going to fix anything. If Liza was out there with Marcus, living the life I thought was ours, then I had to take back control of mine. I couldn't sit idly by while she moved on, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces. But the question lingered. Where do I even start? I grabbed my jacket and walked out the door, the weight of the situation hanging over me like a storm cloud. I needed answers. I needed to confront Marcus. I had to know if this was as serious as it sounded, and if it was, I needed to know why Liza had chosen him over me. I didn't know where to find him. Did he live near us? Was he even still working with Liza? But I had to try. I walked to the car, the cold air biting at my skin, trying to shake the numbness that had started to settle in. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind still stuck on the letter, but I had to do this. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. It was about clarity. I needed to hear the truth from someone who wasn't hiding behind a closed door, someone who could explain what had happened in a way that made sense. Then, without warning, I remembered something. A few weeks ago, Liza had mentioned something about Marcus at dinner. She hadn't said much, just a brief comment about a work event they had attended together, but something about it stuck in my mind. It wasn't the event itself that mattered. It was the way she'd said his name. Almost like she was hiding something deeper that she didn't want me to know. My heart beat a little faster. Could it be that simple? Could Marcus have been in her life long before I ever knew? Had I been blind to something so obvious, to a man who had been in the shadows of our marriage for so long? I pulled over near a street I vaguely remembered, glancing at the buildings around me. There was a small cafe down the block, one Liza and I used to go to on weekends. I took a deep breath, my fingers gripping the wheel tighter. If Marcus frequented places like this, maybe he'd be here. Maybe I'd get the chance to face him. As I stepped out of the car and walked toward the cafe, the cold air hit me like a slap. But it was a good kind of slap. The kind that made me feel alive again, like there was something worth fighting for. Maybe I was about to make a huge mistake. Maybe I'd end up looking like a fool, but I had to try. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The warm aroma of coffee and baked goods filled the air, but it was hard to focus on anything other than the faces in the room. The place was packed with people chatting, sipping their drinks, but I was looking for one face. One person who had been hiding in plain sight. And then I saw him. Marcus. He was sitting at a corner table, his back turned to me, casually reading a newspaper. He looked just like I remembered, well-groomed, confident, and a little too at ease for my liking. Something stirred inside me. Anger? Jealousy? I wasn't sure, but I couldn't back down now. I walked toward the table, my footsteps loud in the silence of my thoughts. As I approached, he looked up, his expression unreadable. He didn't seem surprised to see me. In fact, he almost seemed prepared for this moment. Jacob, he said, his tone almost too calm. I was wondering when you'd show up. My heart was pounding as I stood there, facing Marcus. His calm demeanor, the way he looked at me like we were old friends, made my blood boil. He knew. He knew this moment was coming. I could feel it in the air. He wasn't surprised to see me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The anger inside me was rising, but I wasn't going to let it control me. Not now. Marcus, I said, forcing the word out. We need to talk. My voice was steady, though my hands were shaking. He put the newspaper down slowly, like he had all the time in the world. His smile was almost pitying, like he was humoring me. I figured you'd have questions, he said coolly. But I have to ask, what exactly do you want from me, Jacob? I clenched my jaw, feeling the weight of his words. What did I want? The answer was simple, the truth. I want to know how long this has been going on, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but the words carried the weight of everything that had been building up inside me. How long have you been seeing Liza behind my back? Marcus didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, his arms folded across his chest. I've been seeing Liza for a while, Jacob, but don't act like this is all on me. You were the one who didn't see it. You were the one who didn't look close enough. His words were sharp, like daggers, and I could feel the sting. But the thing that really hit me was the truth of it. I didn't see it. I had been blind. How long? I repeated, needing the clarity. How long before she decided I wasn't enough? Marcus shrugged, a look of indifference crossing his face. It doesn't matter now, does it? She made her choice. That sentence hit me harder than anything else he'd said. She made her choice. The reality of it was sinking in. She had chosen him. And no matter how much I wanted to scream, no matter how much I wanted to fight for her, I knew it was pointless. But I couldn't walk away just yet. I needed closure. I don't get it, I said, shaking my head. Why her? Why Liza? What makes you think you can just walk in and take what's mine? Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was one of quiet confidence, the kind that made my skin crawl. It wasn't like that, Jacob. I didn't take anything. It's not about what you had. It's about what she wanted. And that's something you couldn't give her. I felt my breath catch in my throat. He was right. Whatever Liza had been searching for, whatever she had been missing, I hadn't been able to give it to her. I thought I had been enough. But I wasn't. I'm sorry, Marcus said, standing up, his tone now more serious. But there's nothing left for you here. She's moved on, and so should you. The finality in his words hit me like a brick wall. It was over. She was gone. I stood there for a moment, trying to digest what had just happened. The man who had taken everything from me was standing in front of me, telling me there was nothing left to fight for. But I couldn't just leave it at that. I couldn't let Liza's betrayal be the last thing I remembered of her. You think this is over? I asked, my voice low but determined. I'm not done yet. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Oh, I think you are. I turned and walked out of the cafe without another word, but inside, I felt like something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just about Liza anymore. This was about me taking back control of my life. And I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Marcus, define how this ended. I stepped out of the cafe, my mind racing. The conversation with Marcus had left me feeling like I had just woken up from a long, twisted dream. I knew I should feel angry, but instead, I felt numb, like I had been betrayed not just by Liza, but by myself. How had I let it go on for so long? How had I missed every red flag? I walked down the street aimlessly, trying to shake off the weight of everything that had happened. But with every step, the question kept repeating in my mind. What now? I couldn't keep chasing after Liza. She had made her choice, and nothing I did would change that. The harsh truth settled in my chest like a stone. I had been living in a fantasy, believing that love could fix everything. But love wasn't enough if both people weren't committed. The sound of my phone vibrating in my pocket broke my thoughts. I pulled it out, expecting another call from Liza, but it wasn't her. It was Natalie. I hesitated for a moment, wondering why she was calling. I hadn't spoken to her since that day in my apartment. But I answered anyway. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jacob, it's me, Natalie," she said, her voice urgent. "Listen, I've been thinking. I know you want answers, and I know you want closure, but there's something else you need to know." I felt a surge of panic. What now? Hadn't I heard enough? "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice rising. "I didn't tell you everything," she said quickly. "There's more to the story, and I think you need to hear it. It's about Marcus. There's something about him you don't know." I stopped walking, my heart suddenly racing. Something about Marcus I didn't know? I had to know what it was. "What is it? What's going on?" I asked, almost pleading. "I can't explain everything over the phone," she said. "But meet me. Please. We need to talk." I didn't hesitate. Whatever it was, I had to hear it. I agreed to meet her, and we set a time and place. As I hung up, a new wave of confusion washed over me. What could Marcus be hiding now? I had to find out. I arrived at the cafe early, my mind already spiraling with questions. Natalie's call had done more than just stir the pot. It had cracked it open completely. What was she going to tell me? What could possibly be worse than what I already knew? I was already drowning in betrayal, and yet, something about her tone, urgent, shaky, told me that I wasn't done learning just how deep this went. The cafe was quiet when I stepped inside, a stark contrast to the storm raging in my mind. I scanned the room and spotted Natalie sitting by the window, her eyes scanning the street as though she were waiting for someone or something. She didn't see me at first, but as I walked toward her, her eyes lifted. "Jacob," she said softly, her voice almost distant. There was a heaviness to her expression that hadn't been there the last time we spoke. She motioned for me to sit, her hands fidgeting nervously on the table. "Thanks for meeting me," she started, taking a long breath. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but there's something you don't understand. Something you need to know before you make any more decisions about what to do with your life." I sat down, the tension in my shoulders making the chair feel uncomfortable. "What are you talking about, Natalie?" I asked, trying to mask the desperation in my voice. "What else is there? What could be worse than what's already happened?" She looked away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, then met my eyes with a mixture of guilt and regret. "You think this whole thing with Marcus just started recently, don't you? That he just swooped in and took her away from you?" I nodded, confusion creeping in. Was she implying something else? "No, Jacob. This has been going on for a lot longer than you think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're right that Marcus has been in her life for months, but there's more. Much more. They've known each other for years, long before you even met Liza." My stomach dropped, the words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? How long?" Natalie hesitated, her eyes flickering with hesitation. "It goes back to before you two were even together. Liza and Marcus were involved years ago, Jacob. She didn't tell you this, but they had something serious. She thought she was over him, but she never really was." I felt the world spinning around me. I had thought I was the one Liza had chosen. I thought I was the one who had finally made her happy. But this was something else entirely. My mind raced, unable to process what Natalie was saying. "So, all these years, she was still in love with him?" I asked, barely able to form the words. Natalie nodded slowly, the weight of the truth finally sinking in. "Yes, Jacob. And that's why I had to tell you. Marcus didn't just come into your life recently. He was always there, in the background. Liza tried to bury those feelings for a long time, but she couldn't. They've been talking again for months, and that's when things between you two really started falling apart. I sat back in my chair, feeling sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a simple affair. It wasn't just Liza falling out of love with me. This was a story of unfinished business, of a connection that had never really died, even as we built our life together. And that was the hardest part to swallow. You deserve to know the full truth, Natalie continued, her voice shaking now. I know you probably hate me for telling you this, but I couldn't sit by and watch you keep hurting without knowing what was really going on. I looked at her, the confusion and anger inside me mixing into something darker, something harder to control. Why are you telling me all of this, Natalie? What's your angle? What do you want from me? She lowered her gaze, her voice softening. I don't want anything from you, Jacob. I just want you to understand that this, all of this, isn't entirely your fault. You were never in control of it. You were just the person who happened to be there when she needed someone. But Marcus? He's always been the one she really wanted. And I'm sorry it's taken me this long to tell you. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and painful. It wasn't just a betrayal of love. It was a betrayal of everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Liza. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She had been carrying this secret, this other person, in her heart the entire time. Why didn't she tell me? I asked, my voice breaking despite myself. Why couldn't she just be honest? Natalie shook her head. Liza was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what it would mean if you knew the truth. She thought she could keep it under control, but she couldn't. She's made her choices now, and I don't think there's any going back for her. I sat there, the words sinking into my chest like stones. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout, to scream, to make her understand the pain she'd caused. But what good would it do? Nothing would bring back the trust. Nothing would change the fact that she had chosen Marcus over me. And in the end, maybe that was the hardest part of all. The words Natalie had shared with me were like daggers, each one deeper than the last. But as I sat there, the weight of her confession slowly began to lift. It wasn't easy to accept, and I knew I'd need time to process it all, but I understood something now, something crucial. I had spent so much time blaming myself, trying to find reasons why I wasn't enough. But the truth was, I wasn't the one who had failed. It wasn't about being enough or lacking something. It was about two people, one with unfinished business and the other caught in the crossfire. I stood up from the table, the weight of the past few weeks feeling slightly lighter, even if the pain was still fresh. Thank you, Natalie, I said, my voice softer than I expected. I don't know if I can ever forgive Liza for this, but you've helped me understand the bigger picture. And that means more than you know. Natalie gave a small nod, her eyes filled with understanding. You'll get through this, Jacob. You're stronger than you think. As I left the cafe, the world outside seemed to have shifted. It was still the same world, still full of problems and challenges, but I wasn't the same person. I wasn't the person who had been so desperate to hold on to something that had already slipped through my fingers. I wasn't the person who blamed himself for everything that went wrong. I walked home that night with a sense of quiet resolve. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't need to chase after Liza. I didn't need her approval or validation. I needed to focus on myself, to rebuild, to heal. The next morning, I woke up early, the sunlight creeping through the curtains, filling the room with a soft, golden glow. It felt like a new beginning. I didn't know exactly where life would take me, but I knew one thing. I had to let go of the past to move forward. I spent the next few weeks doing the things I had put off for too long, spending time with friends, picking up old hobbies I had neglected, focusing on my work, and slowly finding peace in my own company. I even started seeing a therapist, something I had avoided for too long. Talking to someone about my emotions, about everything I had gone through, was the first step toward true healing. And then, one day, I met someone new. It wasn't anything grand or dramatic. It was simply a chance encounter at the local bookstore. We started talking about our favorite authors, and before I knew it, we'd spent the entire afternoon talking about everything from books to life. Her name was Sarah. She was kind, funny, and completely different from Liza, but in the best way possible. She wasn't a replacement. She was just someone who had come into my life at the right time. I didn't rush things with Sarah. I didn't need to. For the first time in a long while, I understood that happiness didn't depend on anyone else. It started with me. As the months went by, I found peace in the fact that I could move on. Liza had her path, and I had mine. I wasn't going to spend my life looking backward, wishing things had turned out differently. Life was too short for that. And so, I embraced the future with an open heart, ready to make new memories, to learn from the past, and to live without the weight of someone else's choices holding me back. Sometimes, the hardest things in life lead to the most beautiful outcomes. And I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning of a brand new chapter. The end.